So we have so many brain scans of people that have healed themselves from anxiety and depression simply by mastering their thoughts.
Happy New Year, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Steve Doherty. Welcome to the Pacific Channel, where we no longer just talk about the law of attraction, energy healing, and meditation, but also we are going to start offering free healing sessions on the weekend very soon. It's going to be either Saturday or Sunday, and I think it's going to start on the 14th or around then. I'll keep you posted. More exciting news is that at the end of this video, we're going to announce the two winners of the Dr. Joe Dispenza week-long retreat in Cartagena, Colombia. So please stay tuned until the end. But before we get into this video, some of you have asked in the comments who I am, what my background is, and that kind of thing. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Basically, I grew up in Encino, California, near Los Angeles. I was inducted into a cult religion by my mother when I was only 7 years old, and used to study the Bible with Michael Jackson because we were both in the same congregation. His mom and my mom were very close, but when I was about 20 years old, I broke the implicit rules of the religion and did the horrible, wicked thing of going to college, of all things, right, to get a computer programming degree. Later, I got a Bachelor of Science degree in Information Systems from the University of Redlands in California, and I worked as a senior programmer analyst for a Fortune 500 company for many years. So when I was young, I became a computer programmer. I married a coworker and started a family. I had the nice home, the white picket fence, the new SUV, and my favorite Porsche, but inside I felt empty. I felt like I was missing something huge. I knew it in my heart, but I didn't know what it was. My wife at the time could have cared less about my spiritual journey, and there were a lot of other problems in our marriage besides that, so we got divorced. It was my dark night of the soul experience. I didn't want the divorce because we had kids, and I was willing to do anything to keep the family together. That's when I discovered Dr. Wayne Dyer's information. This was back in 2000. Dr. Wayne Dyer's books saved my life. That's when I devoured the self-help section of any bookstore. It's also the time when I quit my career as a computer programmer and decided to become a life coach. So I studied with Kochu University, and they had one class on the law of attraction. This was about 2002. One of the other students told me that if I wanted to learn from the granddaddy of them all on the topic of the law of attraction, that I should study the works of Abraham, which I did. A couple of years later, an engineer friend of mine said, "Steve, if you're going to become a life coach, you've got to learn this thing called EFT. It will greatly benefit your clients," right? So I downloaded the ebook. I read it in one sitting, started using it, applying it, and instantly saw results. And I can tell you some of the stories about that later. I started healing myself, facilitated healing my family, healing my friends, and then finally healing total strangers. Years later, I became a certified EFT practitioner. At the same time, I co-hosted Advanced Law of Attraction meetup groups from 2007 to 2010, studied with the creator of EFT in his home for a week with 12 other healers, and led Zoom meetings with 12 healers, which consisted of doctors, nurses, housewives, and others from around the world for months on end. We studied the new EFT version called Optimal EFT. Some other highlights of my life was that I met two of the law of attraction gurus from the movie The Secret, which was Esther Hicks and Dr. Joe Vitale, but also the famous Hollywood writer George Clayton Johnson for a book I still sort of am working on. And I have countless law of attraction coincidences that happened to me, which I may tell you more about in the future. About 9 years ago, I slowed down my coaching business and started helping people write their self-help books as a ghostwriter, specializing in law of attraction content, since I felt like I knew a lot about it, right? So basically, I am an energy healer and ghostwriter. That's how the Pacific Channel found me. They asked me to write for them, and then they asked me to host the channel too, so here I am. And so with more of these videos, I'll share more and more about things that I have experienced firsthand to help you to get a good, clear picture of the energy healing world to which I have dedicated my life for the last 20 years. I'm not saying I'm the guru or expert, but I have been studying this stuff for many years. So those are the highlights of my life. Sorry if it was TMI. I hope it helps to demystify who I am. And now Let's look into this audio clip from Dr. Joe Dispenza. In this audio clip, a man named Luke asked Dr. Joe a question about what he can do because he was depressed even as a child. He feels like his frontal lobe and top half of his brain is numb, and it's very hard for him to meditate. Dr. Joe gives him advice. Let's listen to this advice now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Adam. This is a question from Luke. Hi, Dr. Joe. I had depression as a child and anxiety most of my adult life, and I've noticed while meditating that my prefrontal cortex and top half of my head are basically numb. This really inhibits my ability to meditate. Do you have any experience with this, and what might I be able to do to bring life back to those areas? Thank you.
Okay, this is a great question, and I'm going to answer it, Luke, in steps because I think it'll serve everybody. So if you look at a functional brain scan, like a functional SPECT scan or functional MRI, many times when you see anxiety in the brain, it looks a lot like depression, and when you see depression in the brain, a lot of time it looks like anxiety. And for the most part, they're two sides of the same coin. In fact, most people who have one have the other. And so if you think about not early onset depression, childhood depression, if there's been some event or some trauma for a young person, can certainly drive them to relive that past enough times, and because they're young, the subconscious gets programmed pretty quickly that they can get very depressed about life. But depression really is, for the most part, if it's not early onset, many times it's most people having some event in their life or moving really far out of balance physically, chemically, and emotionally, that they just run out of energy, and the brain runs out of energy as well. But it's really created by that exact thing. Reviewing our past over and over again, and when we revisit that memory, we produce a cascade of chemicals that actually causes us to feel that the feeling of that memory the moment we think it, and it's almost instantaneous. In fact, you do it enough times, when it gets conditioned, the body knows it's coming. In fact, it's influencing the mind a lot of times. And so do that enough times and you squander a lot of energy. You mismanage your energy, and you condition the body to feel hopeless and powerless, or suffer or be in pain. And there's neurocircuitry and neurochemistry and brain function that supports that from a clinical standpoint. The problem with that a lot of times is there's a mode in the brain that's always anticipating the next moment, or anticipating the future, or planning for the future, because if we plan for the future, we know where we're going, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a healthy way that we can actually function in three-dimensional reality, and it's a healthy way to create also, set our goals and envision a future. The problem is that when the trauma, the betrayal, or the abuse, or whatever it is, or the diagnosis, whatever it is, causes us to try to anticipate the future, and we start choosing futures in our mind that really are actually exposés or more evolved worsenings of the past. Prepare for that scenario where you got to get ready for it could happen, or what if it happened again, or it's going to happen again, or your brain starts taking the information that's presently in front of it and starts using it to interpret it as what could possibly occur. The same thing happens. That image of that future, based on knowing the feeling from the past, causes the body to get afraid of the event occurring again, and it's that stimulus and response that is the conditioning process that causes the body to be living in that future in the present moment, no different than the person who's living in the past. They're reliving that event. The body's believing it's in that event over and over again. And the body's objective, right? And it's the servant to the mind. So a lot of times that volley that goes on between the past and the future causes a lot of dissonance, it causes a lot of incoherence, it causes a lot of fracturing of wholeness in the brain. And so the autonomic response that goes on with that, actually, when we're in stress and we're in survival, blood is shunted out of the neocortex, primarily the forebrain, and there's dilation of arteries to the hindbrain and to the hypothalamus and to the amygdala and to the survival centers of the brain, and the energy moves to that primitive reflex, that sympathetic response, and so a lot of times when that occurs, the frontal lobe loses blood flow. Now, when we're under stress and we're living in survival, we're narrowing our focus. We're getting very single-minded, and that's a healthy thing to do when the brain is in balance. Single-mindedness helps us to allow our behaviors to match who we want to be or match our intentions. And so, single-mindedness is great, but the stress hormones cause us to become over-focused now, right? And so, the problem with that is the brain is in a loop. There's a gear shifter in the brain that the cingulate can't shift gears, and so the person stays in this loop of thinking and feeling and thinking and feeling, and their thought is actually driving more blood flow out of the forebrain and into the hindbrain, because the thought of whatever it is they're thinking is producing a stress response, and the sympathetic nervous system switches on. Now, I'm going to say this based on just what we presently know about the brain, but the brain doesn't feel. In fact, you can do brain surgery on a person while they're awake, and you could be touching the delicate glistening fibers of their gray matter, and they wouldn't feel anything. You can stimulate those neurological networks with very fine electricity and activate those circuits, and they'll recall memories as if they were recalling them themselves. So the brain really doesn't feel in that sense. But we do see from a clinical standpoint with anxiety and depression, a narrowing of focus or an over-focus, an obsession, and could get really almost to a point of neurosis for certain people. But there's this kind of narrowing of focus that takes place, and a loss of blood flow to the forebrain. So when the brain isn't working right and your executive function isn't working right, and the boss is asleep or the symphony leader is asleep, the rest of the brain runs amok. It has no leader. So that's when it gets very disorderly and disintegrated. So we have so many brain scans of people that have healed themselves from anxiety and depression simply by mastering their thoughts and mastering their feelings. And this is a tedious process at first. This is, in a sense, David versus Goliath. This is the 5% of your conscious mind somehow suppressed enough for you to actually get into the operating system where all those things, that mess exists, and begin to disentangle from it. And so people who have anxiety, if they catch their thought going to that worst case scenario, and they catch it while they're in the middle of a meditation and they're bringing it back, they're in the process of change. It's not that they're doing their meditation wrong. They're actually executing exactly what's supposed to happen. The other traditions, other religions, the Buddhists call it the monkey mind, where it's running all over the place. Not to say that this person's having that. It's a very, very protective mechanism. The protective networks in the brain are really looking to make sure that the body's safe. So you catch yourself going to that scenario, and you bring your attention back to the present moment. That's the unknown. The predictable future that person is forecasting in their mind is the predictable known, and the romancing of the past is the familiar past. So that's the known also. The only place where the unknown exists is the present moment. So it's a labor for the present moment. So then the body is used to it constantly living in fear and constantly keeping its attention on the outer world, because that's what those hormones do. And you want to quit, you want to give up, you want to open your eyes, you want to start tomorrow. And you start getting frustrated, and that is the body trying to return back to familiar territory, back to the known. So we know that when people actually notice that, and it's no longer about the meditation that they're doing, it's about mastering whatever it is that's standing in the way between them and doing it well. This is an ongoing process. You settle the body back down into the present moment, and you're telling it it's no longer the mind. That is another way to overcome anxiety. So the body is now you're inhibiting that chemical response, and the body's craving those chemicals. And then you want to get up and you want to check your emails, you want to get back on your social media, you want to run around and do things, but you set aside an hour for yourself, and you can't sit, and the body wants to get up, and you're working really hard in executing a will that's greater than the program. We have so many people that keep disinvesting their attention and energy out of the past memories. They keep catching themselves defaulting there and returning back, and the body's calling for that memory to feel that emotion. And most of our feelings that we get come from our interaction with the outer world through experience. And now you're denying the body of its experience in three-dimensional reality, and it's dependent on seeing and experiencing and moving and touching and feeling and tasting and watching and viewing and all that stuff. So you're telling the body now this is not a time for that, and it's not used to not feeling anything, and it certainly isn't used to feeling you helping it to feel differently. It usually is dependent on something on the outer world. So you're going against this battle that constantly goes on. It's that laboring for the present moment is really what this work is about, and that's where possibility exists. That's where the eternal now is, and we discovered that when people do that really well, and when they think they're doing their meditations wrong, or they think it's a horrible meditation, it's such a great, important moment for them to believe that's just the battle that's taking place. So when a person keeps being uncompromising for that present moment, there comes a moment where the body just realizes there's nothing else it can do. It's thrown all the tantrums, it's got angry, it's given you all the excuses, it's brought up everything from the past, it's forecasted every worst case scenario, and you're still waiting. You're still sitting there, and you keep training it to stay in the present moment. There's an enormous liberation of energy, and really you're not thinking and feeling any thoughts that have to do with those first three energy centers. There's only one place energy has to move in it. It moves into the heart, and the person has reported everything from heart orgasms to their heart burst wide open, or they felt this flood of incredible blend of rainbow of feelings that was just everything that they've always wanted to feel their whole life. And yet that's the body liberating all that emotion, and it moves into the heart. The person then kind of moves out of survival and kind of relaxes into the present moment. That's really a powerful moment. When energy moves to the heart, we see it move to the brain, and the person now is in some measure relaxed and awake. They're truly in the present moment, and they start feeling whole, and they start feeling creative, and they're not worrying any longer. We have so many scans of people that actually do that really well. So broadening and opening your focus instead of narrowing your focus is what this work is about. It's connecting to that invisible field of unifying energy that exists beyond our senses, that connects everything physical and material. And we got to remember that it's real. That's the most important thing. If we don't have the circuits in the brain that it's real, and we haven't really contemplated it long enough, we're wasting really a lot of our time. But if you really believe that it's real, and you start broadening your focus, and you go from particle to wave, from matter to energy, your brain starts to organize back into to order. And the prefrontal cortex actually changes. It switches down, continues to switch down, it switches up, and that person gets focused, and then all of a sudden you see it slowing down again. And so the act of broadening your focus is to integrate the brain when it's disintegrated. So practicing that kind of broadened focus and practicing focusing on nothing actually starts to make the most dramatic changes. So a little bit about anxiety and depression. It's really about mastering the moment, and those moments add up. So try it out. We have plenty of data that show that people do that really, really well. And when they do, they literally feel.
So basically, Dr. Joe's response to Luke to overcome the numbness that he feels in his head is to meditate. But what is depression? From a more spiritual train of thought, it's basically you not lining up with the greater you, your higher self, or your inner being. Depression is a feeling of complete powerlessness. It's a feeling of utter dismay and futility. And if it was something that started in childhood, then a person may have a lot of work to do to overcome it. I hate to sound like a broken record here, but I think Luke would benefit most from learning EFT and zapping all of those past memories of any emotional intensity. But by all means, meditate too. I just think that he could progress much, much faster, and EFT is the fastest energy healing tool I know about. I'm not faulting Dr. Joe here. I'm just saying that EFT is a wonderful tool for anyone who is depressed. There are a lot of law of attraction teachers who say that you should never go back in time and try to fix any past negative event. But I believe that they say that because they don't know how to do EFT, and they don't know how effective and quick it is. The point is, you can heal anything, including depression, and there are many different ways to do it. So if meditation is taking you a while to get to work, another option is to try EFT. You'll be glad you did. Okay, very good. So now it's time to announce the 2 winners of the week-long workshop retreat to Cartagena, Colombia, where you can meet Dr. Joe Dispenza himself and change your life for the better. But first, on behalf of the Pacific Channel team, I want to thank you if you participated in the giveaway. It helps our channel if you share this video, comment, and like, of course. So now it's time to announce the winners. Drum roll, please. Was that really cheesy or what? Oh wait, I think I hear my cat calling. Kidding. What if I just announced myself as one of the winners? Would anyone realize it? Kidding again. And the winners are... The winners are Jensen Long and Sage Bailey. Jensen and Sage, congratulations. I sincerely hope you get everything you can out of that workshop. It's going to be a great and wonderful experience. You'll be contacted shortly. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We read all of your comments. Thank you so much for your nice comments, and Happy New Year. May 2023 be your best year ever. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.